This is just sort of finished. I know that there are some videos that I have where it's just cut off, and that's because um, I'm just using a cheap Motorola phone, and for obvious reasons. But I was trying to combine a lot of what I experienced by virtue of what I learned with the video that I did where I talked about growing up in Newport Beach, California, and in the United States of America. And I used to go out I love the ocean. So I love to swim in the ocean, and I have board surfed in the ocean when I was a child, and then I knee boarded. There's also what we call knee boards and what's called boogie boarding, like a belly board. You just ride the board from the wave. So between 17th Street and 19th Street, particularly in the summer when there were hurricanes down in Baja California and Mexico, large swells would come up into that part of the coast in Newport Beach. And between 17th Street and 19th Street, those waves were probably a good 20 feet, 20 to XX, 20 feet plus. Okay. So this is like 1963, right around that particular day was not 19. I don't remember the exact day when that happened. It was called Pipeline at Newport. So most people in the surfing community know pipeline, like a pipe, like the tunnel, right? Spinning waves, spinning water, spinning light. The acceleration of light, which is the acceleration of our electrical power to increase the strength of our immunity function, which is the planetary shield, which is the morphogenetic field structure of the cathodic 15D D812 grid, restoring balance, cosmic balance, cosmic fire, cosmic music, cosmic love. The first one, the sacred one, our sacred heart encryption code, protecting the one all creation. And so what I noticed when I go out in the water, right, the waves would come in what we call sets of 4. And usually the fourth one was a bigger wave. Not by a lot, but it was a little bit bigger. And then it would be calmer. And then the waves would come back in again as sets. So you could sit out there in the morning and catch wave after wave after wave after wave after wave. And this is how sharing energy works. Right? Which means, okay, I didn't catch that wave. You can have it. Right? I'll share that wave with you. I don't have to take it. So here comes like a perfect wave that you could ride for a half a mile. Wow, a free ride. Wow, the thrill, the rush. Clockwork Angels. And so what I noticed over time between the early 60s and then later in the late 1960s and the 70s, all of a sudden the water has a lot more people out there now. And now they want to take the wave. Now they want to take the wave. And they were not sharing the waves. They had to have it. I own this wave. I own this wave. I own this wave. And you could experience the aggression. And what did that do? We don't want to go out on the water to be with them. Right? Because it's like pushing us out of the way. We own the water. We own the planet. We own the energy. It belongs to us. It's ours. We're taking the waves away from you. Okay? So fast forward from that experience as a child, when I got over to the island of Kauai, and there was a friend of mine that I used to surf with in Newport Beach. So when I was working at the U.S. Forest Service, this is the beauty of the triangulation, is that it was snowing one day up in a place called Chileo, California, which is up on the Angeles National Forest above Pasadena, California, where, what's his name, JPL, those folks, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Carrie Cassidy worked for JPL. Okay. That's not a mathematical coincidence, is it? So when I was up on November 15th, 11:15, it snowed, a couple feet of snow, and so they ended the fire season. So I had some postcards from a friend of mine who was living in a treehouse on the north shore of Kauai, and said, "You got to come here. You wouldn't believe the waves over here. We're living right on the beach. We're living like Robinson Crusoe." Remember the movie by Disney called Swiss Family Robinson? Like Paleo Man? We're living like natives used to live here 10,000 years ago. You wouldn't believe it. It's all free. Nature's providing everything for us. Guavas, passion fruit. Oh my gosh, papayas, avocados. We're not having to pay for any of this energy. Right? Power plants providing you free energy. And so I took what little money that I had, enough to buy a plane ticket, jumped on a 747 with my board, and I landed in Lihue, and this was 1972, and when I was looking out the window, just as we were beginning to descend, like a descending spiral, and land, I thought, man, I landed on another planet. Okay. I remember that's what my mind was perceiving, what I was seeing. This is a different world. Wow. The world our mind lives in, the energy of the mind, our heart. So when I landed on the island, Bill, who was my friend, and his girlfriend took me back. But by the time we got there, it was nighttime. So when I woke up in the morning, here I'm inside of a treehouse that was basically a single structure, but they were in ironwood trees, and ironwood trees are extremely strong. They can withstand an enormous amount of pressure and not break. And so I thought, wow, this is like living in heaven. And so we had a garden there that was tended to by a few of the females that lived there. And there was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a lot of bad press, bad energy, has written a lot about the people that were living in that community that was known as Taylor Camp, because Elizabeth Taylor's brother Harold had donated that land as an electron donor, because initially there were surfers that would come over there because the North Shore of Kauai has some of the most beautiful waves in the world to ride for free. And so, and one of those places is known as Honolulu Bay. And I believe a guy by the name of Jerry Lopez, who was known as Mr. Pipeline, because his mind's energy, the energy of his mind, he was able to tune into the energy of the wave and experience being perfectly balanced with the waves, and why he was so successful at being able to ride those waves when other people were crashing their software, writing the software of those waves. He wasn't crashing when he was riding those waves. He was tuned in. The timing was perfect to ride that tunnel. And so the lesson in all this when I got there was acknowledging that I'm no longer held captive to the programs that others are running when I left the mainland, because now I'm running different echo map recording speeds on the island of Kauai. The core, the crystal core. That's why that day when I nearly was physically knocked off my feet, when my heart was accelerating at such a high rate of speed, the light that was coming through my heart, which is the core, which is the primal sound and light field, when I was there in 72. So you can, it's called tapping into the core, pulling the core, and pulling in shattered crystal soul fragments at the highest rate of speed without harming anyone. Not harming one unit of energy that is self-aware, ever. Yeah, Mama. And so the beauty in this was like when I got back to the mainland and my mother saw me and looked directly into my eyes, and she said, I have never seen you look so healthy in my life. What happened to you? Who did that to you? I was living in nature, Mama, the way nature intended us to live, which are the original instructors, which are the original instructions of how to build a Kirache body and experience pure, internal, eternal, absolute love that goes on forever. To experience being totally loved and totally relaxed, being you, the real universe, the Unisci. That's why whenever I perceived that when I was there, I acknowledged one day when I was out on a surfboard and I was looking down in the water, and it must have been 100 feet deep probably. It was clear. I could see the sand on the bottom. And I acknowledged when I looked up to the Poly Cliffs, I'm only going to be here for a short period of time, and then I got to move on. I'm on the job. And so I remember crying. That's why when I jumped back on the airplane to go back to work with the Forest Service, to work on that, well, then it was a 20-man hotshot crew. I cried like a baby on that airplane, and the attendant on who came and walked up to me and said, what's the matter with you? Why are you crying? And I'm a grown man. It would take me too long to explain that to you, how precious that island is to me. And so, yeah, in other words, I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave. That's why when I went back there a few years ago on December 15th, it's just not the same place. And you see why when you look at the statue of Captain Cook in Waimea. That's why we're here, is to clean up the mess, which is clearing the miasma, which is healing. That's what I do every day, healing the field, 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 clearing the miasma, clearing the miasma, clearing the lungs so the planet can breathe again. Breathing 90 on the vertical, 90 on the horizontal, which is the perfect cross. And that center point is the 13th Mother Ark of a crystal rainbow. That's what I am. That's why I'm here. Restore the first rainbow. Aurora. Have a beautiful day.